For those of you that also played in the G era, I think you remember how, your main deck didn't really change too much, and you just, added in a couple new strides or whatever new stride came out for your clan, and then, kind of just, went on with it. Maybe put in a couple new cards, change it up, but the general game plan of the deck and the way the deck functions never really changed. That's what Vanquisher is in Standard. Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at my Dragonic Vanquisher Standard deck profile with the updated support, so with full Bronto. So of course, the deck got even better. It wasn't, as high tier as it was at the beginning of 2020, and now, going into the beginning of 2021, the deck still feels like a really good Axel deck, and it still has quite a few good matchups. It does suffer from a really bad early game where you don't really do that much because your entire kind of all your resources are kind of poured into your grade 3 turn, but even then the grade turn is really explosive and you can do a lot with it. So let's just jump into it and see what the deck is all about right now. So kind of kept this on here for whatever reason, but anyway, let's take a look at it. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the regular Dragonic Vanquisher first. So of course this is our key card. I guess I'll keep it in the middle for now. So Dragonic Vanquisher, what does it do? If you don't know already, during your turn, if a total of 3 or more of any player's cards were bound this turn, all your front row units get plus 10k power. So of course this is the main kind of skill you want to be aiming for, because it will be bumping up everything in your front row by 10k, which is really good. So that makes all your smaller attacks hit for much more, significant numbers. And then once per turn, Vanguard Circle can almost one and choose one of any player's front row rear guards and bind it. But then if your soul has a grade 3, you and your opponent choose a card from your hands and bind one each. So that's also a really good ability, because you get to not only pop something on the field, but you also get to pop something in each player's hand. But when your stuff is popped from your hand, you usually get to call it. So that's also really good. On top of that, if your opponent doesn't have any rears for you to pop, or you want to save the one rear that they do have on the field to pop with a different skill, then you can basically just use his second skill to bind one of your own rear guards, and then still be able to bind their stuff and your hand with the other skills in this deck to hit that plus 10k requirement. So that's also really good. We don't do that part of the skill too much though, because of course we have a new grade 3 boss unit. But before we look at that, I do want to take a look at, the best supporting role in the deck, the one that really carries its weight, which is none other than Jaggy Shot. So Jaggy Shot, of course, still one of the MVPs of the deck. So let's just take a look at him once again. When he attacks a Vanguard rearguard circle, you bind a card from your hand, choose an opponent's front row rearguard, bind it, and if your opponent has no rearguards in the front row, then you draw a card. So of course it's also really good, because you get to remove something, you bind something from your hand, which means usually you're going to get to call it, and then on top of that you get to draw an extra card. But that it doesn't end there, because at the end of the battle that he attacked on rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is a Dragonic Vanquisher, put him into your soul and draw a card. So you get to draw 2 out of 1 rearguard, which is also really good. People sometimes say oh, Vanguard cards have so much text on them, and I get it. Your Vanguard's doing a bunch of stuff, and then all the other cards in your hand and on your field are doing a bunch of stuff now. Definitely was simpler back in the day, but I kind of like it more like this myself, where every single card in the deck is doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I think that is pretty cool. And then finally, the new card in the deck. Some people play this as a 3 of, some people play this as a 4 of. I like 4 for the consistency of making sure that I always see it on my turn 3, because this card is amazing. So Dragonic Vanquisher Full Bronto. He is regarded as a Dragonic Vanquisher because of Jaggy Shot skills, that you can still use that, put him into the soul to draw an extra card skill. And then Vanguard Circle, when placed, all your front row units get plus 10k until the end of turn. Why is that a thing? Well, that's because this competes with Vanquisher's plus 10k to the front row. So basically, when you ride this in the battle phase with his final skill, you lose that continuous plus 10k. So you have to be careful with your attack pattern to make sure that you're maximizing on the plus 10ks. So sometimes you will want to attack with your stuff that, for example, goes into the soul, that then calls something else out and stuff like that, to make sure that it's also only the fresh units that are on the board to receive that plus 10k buff. So it's really important to time that carefully. But the reason why I say timing is because his final skill says when bound from hand during your turn. So by something like a Jaggy Shot right here, you get to, if your Vanguard is Dragonic Vanquisher, you can discard 1 and then ride this card as stand, and he gets drive -1. And of course, when you ride him, you gain an Axel. So that's also really nice. So you get an Axel mid battle phase. And then during that turn's end phase, you cannot get another Axel. However, it says that at the end of the turn, ride a grade 3 from your soul as rest, and this is a named once per turn. So what will happen is that you're going to attack with your regular Dragonic Vanquisher, and then you're going to do a few other attacks with your rear guards that call other rear guards from your hand, and then on that final bind from hand, you're going to basically go into the Full Bronto, and then Full Bronto will ride, you get another Axel, and then you're going to get to still attack with 1 drive check, and then still be able to attack with more stuff that will, potentially still be able to get, powered up by that 1 trigger that you check and stuff like that. So, of course, this is just another Vanguard attack for this already very good deck. that, you know, like was already doing so many things. You know, it's like it's field removal, it's like multi-attacks thanks to accels and thanks to like calling from being bound and stuff like that. But FULLBRONTO basically says, here's another Vanguard attack, but be careful when you use me because you don't want to waste that plus 10k that you have from the continuous on cards that are called afterwards. So, you know, you don't want to like go into him and then use Jaggy Shot to call something that won't get the plus 10k, because this is when placed, it is not continuous. So be very careful with that. But in my opinion, the FULLBRONTO just makes the deck even faster, even better than it already was, and so for that reason it is a fantastic card. Now looking at grade 2s, we're going to start with the, actually let's not start with a new one, let's start with the card that is usually called by effects, which is of course the Chatra. So Chatra is an amazing card, and its main purpose is to be bound. So what does he actually do? He basically says that second skill is, when bound from hand during your turn, you may call this card to rearguard circle. If you called, this unit gets plus 10k. So you want to be binding him with cards like Jaggy Shot and the Dragonic Vanquisher to, you know, bind it from hand and just call him out immediately. And then on top of that, he has a rearguard circle skill when his attack hits a Vanguard. Keep in mind he's 8k power, so he'll be 18, 28 with the Vanquisher plus 10k, and then if he's an Axel 2, he's going to be 33. So when his attack hits a Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and bind opponent's front row or rearguard. So usually by the time he hits, your opponent will not have any front row anymore, but Soul Blast 1 to draw is still really, really nice because you are now getting a lot of soul, because you are, you know, rewriting that FULLBRONTO, like FULLBRONTO is going into the soul basically when you rewrite into the regular Vanquisher. And then we have 4 of the new card, which is the Rock Climb Dragon. So Rock Climb is a very nice new addition to the deck. So what he says is, at the end of the battle he attacked, if your Vanguard is Dragonic Vanquisher, you can retire him, draw a card, and bind a card from hand, and then choose an opponent's front row rearguard and bind it. So this skill is also really nice because basically what it says is, he swings, and then if your Vanguard is a Vanquisher, you get to basically just pop himself, draw an extra card, and then choose what card to bind from your hand like a Chatura, and then still pop one of your opponents, and then Chatura gets resolved and calls itself to the same rearguard circle that this was on. So he empties out the rearguard circle only for Chatura to come in and occupy it. So that's also a really nice little synergy. Doesn't cost counterblast, doesn't cost soul blast, doesn't cost anything, and so for that sole reason it is really good. It's basically like a backup Jaggy Shot as well in that sense, because it doesn't provide grade 3 in the soul, but it provides a bit of drawing. It's like a 1-for-1 for drawing, but it also, if you get to bind the Chatura, it's also really good, and you get to still bind something on your opponent's side of the field, so it's still basically a +1 in that case. And then finally, our last card here is going to be the Vortex Red 4 times. So no Cho. Part of the reason why is because it feels like it doesn't really mesh well with the current support, and a lot of players have been dropping it over time. It feels like the deck just like, it's better to run this like seamless engine instead of trying to splash Cho into it, because with all the cards you've seen so far, everything works together, and the Vortex Red does too, because he says when he attacks on rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is Dragonic Vanquisher, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, bind a card from hand. So again, you can bind the Chatura to call it out, and so basically the entire deck functions as one engine. This will either, you'll bind the Chatura, you can bind the FULLBRONTO, as like the final attack to get the, the final bind before you rewrite into FULLBRONTO, and so for that reason, it is really nice. And so we want this deck to function as like one seamless engine that just like, it's powering itself as it progresses. So for that reason, we are not playing Cho anymore. So that old card has been dropped for now, and I think that it's better to play it as seamlessly as possible instead. Now, looking at the grade 1s, we're going to start off with a new one, which is going to be the Chain Bolt. So Chain Bolt is, a very typical card for most clans nowadays. So he says, when you ride him, look at the top 7, reveal a Vanquisher, add it to your hand. And so that's really nice because we now have 8 Vanquishers that this can hit, and that is also really good. So of course, really nice. And on top of that, he says, when bound from hand during your turn, you can call him to rearguard circle. So on top of that, he's like basically another Chatura, but grade 1. You can sometimes just like, bind him with a different skill to call him behind the Vortex Red and make a 17k or 27 with the, the Axel, not the Axel, the Dragonic Vanquisher plus 10k bonus. So really good card for that reason. It's very simple, it's a searcher that helps us find our regular Vanquisher as well as the FULLBRONTO, and for that reason it is definitely very cool. On top of that, we are running 4 of the Mighty Bolt. This was reprinted recently too, so it should be easier to get now. Mighty Bolt is very straightforward. During your turn, if your opponent's card was bound, if any player's card, was bound this turn, gets plus 5k power. And on top of that, when you ride him or call him, look at the top 5 for grade 3. If you add 1, then you have to discard 1, but of course that is not a problem. So, this helps us find our Vanquisher. We always want to be sitting on Vanquisher first before going into the FULLBRONTO, and of course sitting on Jaggy Shot kind of hurts as well, so really want to make sure we're hitting those Vanquishers here. Hitting FULLBRONTO is kind of okay because at least he has the Vanquisher name, so you can still like, you know, use all your other pieces in your deck like the Vortex Red and the Jaggy Shot to at least draw more cards, even if you're not doing especially like even if you're not doing that much in terms of like power and, you know, being able to bind stuff on the board. And then the final grade 1 as a one of is still the Rising Phoenix. This is a pretty flexible spot. I like the Rising Phoenix for, you know, when you empty out your axle circles with Jaggy Shot, sometimes you still have that one axle circle you can kind of call something to, so the Rising Phoenix can still help out sometimes, but it's definitely more of a bonus now than anything else. And yes, we are running 9 grade 1s. It is very low, and that's why a lot of people run full Bronto at 3. So if you don't feel too safe running 9 grade 1s and you want to run 10 instead, then you can feel free to maybe play 2 Rising Phoenixes and take down a full Bronto or something like that. But I personally like to have maximum chance of hitting with the Searcher here, so for that reason I choose to play 9 grade 1s. And generally you kind of mulligan for this, and then the deck kind of searches the rest of your stuff for you, so usually it's pretty reliable, let's just put it that way. And then finally, nothing too surprising here, we're running 4 of the new heal because she's a cutie, so of course we're doing that. 4 draw PGs because draw PGs are of course good in this deck, and then 2 of this draw, and then 2 of this crit, and finally 4 of this crit. So still going for this old 6/6 lineup. I've tried with 8 crit, I've tried with 8 front, I've tried with I think I liked 7 crit and 5 draw as well. That was quite nice too. But the extra draws help because sometimes like you're binding so much from your hand now that having this extra like 5k shield draw is good, because you can just throw it away and bind it sometimes and not feel bad about it, because if you're binding anything else, you're kind of, it feels like you're missing, either losing out on a piece for your combo later on, or you're missing out on a big shield power unit that you don't want to be losing either. So those draws help, not so much for the draw effect, but just for having like more 5k shields basically that aren't pieces. And like while having crits is good too, hitting the draw as an effect is also not too bad because it finds you more of your pieces if you do hit it. And then finally the starter, of course, running that body because that egg is ugly, disgusting. Alright, so that is the updated standard Vanquisher deck. This deck is also ridiculously easy to upgrade into premium. The main deck almost stays the same and you just add a G-Zone to it, which consists of mostly recent stuff and like 1 old stride. So I'll probably do an updated premium deck profile for it too. I've recently been playing Angels and DP mostly for premium, so now I'm getting onto other stuff like Night Rose, Blouse, Narukami, and like other stuff like that. So definitely expect a lot of premium content because it's been kind of my favorite format to be playing recently, I guess. But standard's been really fun too, and especially these 2 decks, Gabriel and Full Bronto, I've been having a lot of fun with, and so honestly they're really cool, and I'm overall glad that I built them. And so of course this deck is also, I like how it's like flavorful, how, or I guess flavorful in a way, how like both Vanquisher and Gabriel ask for like 3 cards to be like, you know, something to be done 3 times for their condition for the plus 10k to the front row. It kind of, you know, it's reminiscent of the old like Team Fukuhara in the G-Next season, so I kind of like that. But yeah, so I really like Vanquisher. You know, I really said like this was one of my favorite cards of 2020, and so him getting support also felt really cool, and overall I was really happy about this deck getting support. And it's probably my favorite Axel deck as well because, you know, Narukami, when it binds, it is very cool, and I hope they kind of stick to that playstyle in the future as well. But anyway, that's gonna be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Make sure you give this deck a spin as well if you're unsure of how to be building your Dragonic Vanquisher, and also try to push out some kind of premium video as well for this deck going forward. But anyway, on that note, that's gonna be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.